So for this video, I want to go over variables. So first, we actually need a reason to use variables. So this isn't really a good reason that we need it. We're just printing out a message and we just type the message. So let's say instead, let's say we do a greeting. So just hello, something a little simpler. And let's say that we're going to say that greeting 3 times. Okay, the first problem we have here is that this doesn't really make sense. So let's say the reason that we're saying the greeting 3 times is that we're very energetic. So maybe a silly example, but that's what we'll go with. So a comment would be really good here. Let's do, we say greeting 3 times because we are energetic. So this is an example of why you might want to use a comment. So if someone was to just come along to this code without the comment, they'd see that 3 times, doesn't make sense, they'd probably just cancel that out, they probably made a mistake. But when they read this comment, they say, oh, the reason you're saying it 3 times is because you're very energetic, so now it makes more sense. So that's just a little program that we've started to create. Now let's make it a little better. Let's use some variables. So if I wanted to change this greeting, let's say today I say hello, but tomorrow I'm going to say hi. I would actually have to go into the code. I would have to write hi, hi, hi. So that was a little slow, and especially if you have a lot more code and you keep using that greeting, you're going to have to go through and change every single case. So this is where a variable becomes very handy. So it's just a word that we can write in here once that's going to update whenever we change it. So you might have seen it like something like this, right? So x equals 10. If you've ever done algebra before, you're basically saying that whenever we type the word x or the letter x, we actually mean 10. So that's basically what a variable is. Now for coding, in the JavaScript language anyways, we're going to use the keyword let. So let is just, it's something that the computer needs, kind of like a semicolon, that's telling it, okay, we're about to declare a variable. So the next thing is a variable. So I could say x, and then equals 10. And then that semicolon just to say that we're done this line of code. Right, so the computer is going to read through it. It's going to say, okay, let, so we're declaring a variable. Whatever I type in here, the variable name is x. And then equals, so what is the variable equal to? What does x mean? X is 10, so x is equal to 10. And then the semicolon just shows that we are at the end of this statement. So we could actually go in here and we could maybe change this to hi, right? So we've got let x equals hi. So now x is always going to equal that. So we can go in here, we can do x, and x, and x. There. So now if I press play, we're going to get the message hi 3 times. So we've said x equals hi, and then we've just console logged x, and the program knows that x equals hi, so it's going to print it out 3 times. Now this is a lot quicker, right? I can do hey, and boom, it's going to do all 3 cases as hey. So that's kind of why you'd use a variable, just to change out many different values, nice and efficiently like that. But we have, even though this is working, we have some style problems. X doesn't really make sense, right? It's just a letter. So in coding, normally you're going to actually call the variable a word or even a phrase. So let's say greeting. So this is whatever you want it to be. You can type anything in here and it'll work just fine. So I've typed greeting, so I'm going to do greeting, and I'm just going to, why don't I copy paste that and go a little quicker. There. So now I've changed x to greeting, and it's still going to work the same as before. Yep, see it just printed out hey again, and I can change that, and we're good to go. Now I can make it a little longer. I could call it my greeting. So let's say I did that, and I just put my in front, right? So you can change the variable name, that's perfectly okay. And it says hi, so as long as you change the name wherever it occurs. So I changed it up here, but I also had to change it down here. Now for capitalization, even though this runs fine, there's kind of a style choice that people will use, and this is called Camel Case. So whenever you're declaring a variable, which is what we've done on line 2, we're actually going to capitalize that G. So how that works is the first letter of the variable is lowercase, and then all of the other letters in a full word are going to be capitalized. So maybe my personal greeting would look like this. So the P of personal, the G of greeting are both capitalized, but the my is not because it's the first word. If I had personal greeting, it would be just like that. So that's called camel case. It's just a style that you're going to see often, and it's very commonly used with variables. So just a good habit to get in the practice of. Okay, but let's just call that my greeting. So I'm going to change these down here. So remember, all your variable names need to be the same. Let my greeting equal hi. Okay, so we've got that there. That's going to run. Everything's working good. Now let's say we wanted to print out something else. So there's more than just these messages that you can do. So this is called a string. So it's just a string of characters. So like letters and numbers. You could do maybe a question mark. So mine is your age 2, something like that. So you can see you can put whatever you want in there. We've got capital letters, spaces, we've got the numbers, we've got a question mark. It's basically just going to convert it into a message. But let's say we wanted to print out 2. So we could do 2 like that, but we can also do, without the quotations, 2. So what 2 is an integer or a number. So we can also have a decimal, like that, and we can even make it negative. So the difference between this and this is that we can actually do math on the other one. So I can't add anything to this, but I can add to this number here. So let's just give that a quick try. Let's actually console log here. And remember those multi-line comments? So I still want to keep all this, but for now I don't want to do it. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to do multi-line there. Boom. So we're going to return to that later, but for now I don't want it to be here. So we've got the console log 2. So I'm going to save and I'm going to run that. And we've got 2. Let's say I want to do 2 plus, let's say 2 plus 3. So you'd expect to get 5, right? If you're doing 2 plus 3 equals 5, I'm going to run that, and we get 23. Now the reason for that is we are actually combining 2 sentences together, basically. So even though we've got a number in that sentence, it's just kind of mashing them together. So that's got a fancy term. It's called concatenation. So it's kind of adding 2 different messages. But we want to do arithmetic. We want to add 2 to 3. So we could do 2 plus 3 without the quotations. And now we should get 5. So now it's treating this as a number. So it's actually a number that we can perform arithmetic on, which means we can add, we can subtract, multiply, all that good stuff. So let's actually go over all the different variable types. So we've got let's say my string, so I'm just going to call this string, equals hello. So string is going to look like that. It's going to have the quotations, and it's going to usually color it a certain color. Say I want to do a number, let my number equals 10. So now it's going to come up with a different color, and that's actually something we can add or subtract to. My decimal equals, let's say, 10.23. So that's a decimal. And I'm just kind of using my then what it is, but remember you could call this whatever you want. You could even say cake, and that's going to run just as good as long as you use the word cake. But since this is a number, let's call it something that makes sense, like that. All right, so we can also do a negative. So let my negative, there we go, if I can spell right, negative number equals negative 23. And I could also make that a decimal. So we're just dealing with strings up here. These are all numbers. If it's a whole number, it's technically called an integer, but it's not going to look any different. Then we have our decimals with our decimal point. And let's cover one new data type. So this is called a Boolean, bool for short. So let my bool equals true. So a Boolean is either true or false. And because of that, it's not going to have the quotations, right? So you can't have like kind of true. You can't have that, right? It's either true or false. So we're just going to write the word true, or we're going to write the word false. So let's say, let's actually make this something that makes a little more sense. So let's say let's say alive, right? So you're usually either alive or not alive. There's no in between. So that's a good case for a Boolean. So we'll say let alive equals false, or let alive equals true. There we go. So now that we've got these different data types that are stored in variables, we can actually start to use those. So let's go away from this greeting example. So we're just going to get rid of the comment because we're no longer doing that. So now we're just practicing. We're just declaring these variables, and we're going to put them in here. So let's say I want to print out my string. That's going to be hello. Let's say I want to do and here, whenever you have a really long variable, if you want to save time, it's actually going to start to auto-complete. So I could just hit enter right now, and it's going to complete it for me. So just a quick way to save some time. Maybe alive. So let's see what happens when I print those out. So we got hello, a negative number, and true. So that's what we'd expect there. So we're just printing out a variable. So just to reiterate there, what we're doing is we're saying let. So we're telling the computer what we're about to do is to declare a variable. And then we're giving it the variable name. And then we're actually setting it to something. So you can declare a variable without giving it a value. So I could say let my age, just let my age. So we will, let's just get rid of all this for now. So I've said let my age, and let's say I go in here and I write out my age. So what is going to happen here? I've just declared a variable, but I haven't actually set it to anything. So if I run that, it's going to say undefined. So basically it doesn't understand what my age is. So there's two ways I can do this. I can either say my age equals, let's say 5, and that should say the number 5, or I can actually tell it later on. So I can say my age, oops, it's got to be the same, equals 5, like that. So if I run that, it's going to give me 5 again. So this is called declaring the variable. So you're just saying, hey, a variable exists and it's called my age. And this down here is called assigning a value to the variable. So I'm saying my age equals 5. So I only have to actually use this let keyword when I'm declaring the variable. And since I've declared it once, I can just use my age from then on. So I could say maybe my age equals 6 now, and it's going to be 6. Right? So it said my age was 5 on line 3. Then we went to line 4 and said my age is 6. And then on line 3 and 4. And then on line 6, it's saying my age is 6 because that was the most recent time we updated it. Or if we already know what my age is, we can just give it a value all on one line and just say my age equals 5. So I'm going to run that, and we get 5 again. So that's just variables, just different data types. We have numbers, we have decimals, we have Booleans, we have strings, and just storing those inside these little containers called variables. So we'll end it there for now.